"Frankie," he whispered, "get everyone. I need to say something." Frankie Jr. called his siblings. They gathered around the bed. 5 of Frank's 7 children. 2 had died years earlier. "We're all here, Dad." Frankie Jr. said, "What do you want to tell us?" Frank took a labored breath. Every word was an effort, but he pushed through. "I'm dying," he said. "You all know that. And before I go, I need to tell you something. Need you to understand something." They waited. My whole life, I thought success meant money, power, respect. I thought if I could make white men respect me, if I could have wealth and status, then I'd be somebody. Then I'd matter. He coughed. Painful. His daughter Ruby held a cup of water to his lips. But I was wrong about all of it. Success isn't money. Success is sitting here with all of you, knowing that despite everything I did, you still love me. You still came. That's success. Tears were forming in his children's eyes. "I destroyed lives," Frank continued. "Sold poison, hurt people, went to prison, lost years with you. And for what? Money that's gone, power that disappeared, respect that was really just fear." He looked at each of his children. "You know what I wish? I wish I could go back to 19, when Bumpy died and I saw my chance. I wish I could make a different choice, get a regular job, be a regular father, live a regular life. Would you have been happy?" Frankie Jr. asked gently. Frank smiled weakly. "Happier than this. Happier than knowing I spent my best years chasing the wrong things. Happier than dying with so much regret." He took another difficult breath. "Listen to me, all of you. You've all done well. Good jobs. Good families. You didn't follow my path. That's the one thing I'm proud of. But I need you to understand why. Why what? Dad? Why you succeeded where I failed. It's not just because you stayed legal. It's because you valued the right things. Family, community, character. The things I ignored while I was chasing money." Ruby spoke. "Dad, we learned that from you. From watching what happened when you chose wrong." "Exactly," Frank said. "That's my legacy. Not the money I made, not the empire I built, but the lesson you learned from watching it all fall apart." He looked at Frankie Jr. "Remember that visit? When you were 10, when you asked if I was a bad man? I remember. I told you the truth, that I'd done bad things, that you needed to be better than me. And you were. You all were. That's the only thing that matters now." Frank's breathing was getting worse. The effort of talking was exhausting him. "Promise me something," he whispered. "All of you. Anything, Dad. Tell the truth about me. Not the Hollywood version. Not the legend. The truth. That I was a drug dealer who hurt people, who went to prison, who wasted his life chasing the wrong things. And tell people, especially young people, that the American gangster story is a lie. There's no glory in what I did. No romance. Just damage. And regret. And dying wishing you'd made different choices." His eyes were closing. The morphine was taking effect. Or maybe just his body shutting down. "I love you all," he whispered. "You're my redemption. The only good thing I did was have you, and not destroy you." "We love you too, Dad," Frankie Jr. said, crying now. "Don't mourn me," Frank said. "Learn from me. Be better than me. That's how you honor me." His eyes closed. His breathing slowed. The hospital monitor showed his heart rate dropping. At 7:23 a.m. on May 30th, 2019, Frank Lucas died. Not dramatically, not violently, just quietly. An old man dying of old age, surrounded by family, after 88 years of life. The funeral was small, private, no press, no crowds, just family and a few close friends. Frankie Jr. gave the eulogy. He didn't sugarcoat his father's life, didn't pretend Frank was a hero, but he also didn't dismiss him as just a criminal. My father was a complicated man. He did terrible things, hurt a lot of people, deserved the punishment he got. If you came here expecting me to defend his crimes, you'll be disappointed. But my father also taught me something valuable. The truth. He didn't lie to me about who he was, didn't make excuses, didn't try to justify his choices. He said, I'm a bad man who did bad things. Be better than me. And that honesty saved my life. In his final words, my father said his legacy isn't the money or the power, it's the lesson, the warning, the example of a life lived wrong, honestly assessed, and used to teach others what not to do. That's not redemption. You can't redeem the harm he caused, but it's a man taking responsibility, admitting his mistakes, and hoping the next generation learns from them. So we bury Frank Lucas today, not as a hero, not as a villain, but as a human being who made terrible choices and spent his last decades trying to make sure others didn't make the same ones. May he rest in peace, and may we learn from his mistakes. After the funeral, the family gathered at Frankie Jr.'s house. They shared stories, looked at old photos, tried to make sense of Frank's life. One photo stood out. Frank in his prime, 1972, wearing that famous chinchilla coat, looking powerful, untouchable, like he owned the world. Next to it, a photo from 28, Frank at 87, wearing a simple sweater, sitting on a park bench with his grandchildren, looking peaceful, present, like he'd finally figured out what mattered. Which one is the real Frank Lucas? Someone asked. Both, Frankie Jr. said. That's the point. People aren't one thing. My father was a drug dealer and a grandfather, a criminal and a father, a destroyer and a teacher. All of it was real. All of it was him. And which part do we remember? All of it. Because that's the only way the lesson works. You have to know the bad to understand why the change mattered. You have to see the damage to appreciate the warning. Today, Frank Lucas's story is told mostly through American Gangster, the 2007 movie starring Denzel Washington. It's entertaining, dramatic, but according to his family, it misses the point. The movie makes it look glamorous. Frankie Jr. said in a 2021 interview, makes it look like my father was some kind of anti-hero, but there was nothing glamorous about it. Nothing heroic. The real story, the story my father wanted told, is about consequences, about how ambition without morality destroys you, about how success without character is meaningless, about how you can make all the money in the world and still die with regret. That's not a movie Hollywood wants to make, but it's the truth. Frank Lucas was buried in a simple grave, no elaborate headstone, no dramatic inscription, just his name and dates. Frank Lucas, 1930-2019, a man who had everything and lost it, who made millions and died with nothing, who lived wrong and spent his final years trying to teach others to live right. Is that redemption? Maybe not. The harm Frank caused can't be undone. The lives destroyed by his heroin can't be restored, but it's something. It's a man taking responsibility, admitting failure, using his mistakes to help others avoid the same path. My father's last gift was honesty, Frankie Jr. says. Brutal, complete honesty about what his life meant. That's rare. Most people die making excuses, justifying their choices, pretending they did their best. My father didn't do that. He said I was wrong, I wasted my life. Learn from me. That takes courage. Maybe more courage than anything he did as a drug dealer. If this story about final words, legacy, and the wisdom that comes too late moved you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you believe honesty, even painful honesty, is the greatest gift we can give. Comment below, what do you want your legacy to be? Remember, you can spend your whole life chasing the wrong things and still teach the right lesson. Frank Lucas proved that his legacy isn't what he built, it's what he learned. And sometimes that's enough. May 30th, 2019, 6:47 a.m., Cedar Grove, New Jersey. Frank Lucas opened his eyes for what would be the last time, 88 years old, dying of natural causes in a hospital bed, surrounded by his children, not in a shootout, not in prison, not murdered by rivals, but dying peacefully of old age, with family present. For a man who'd lived the life Frank Lucas lived, that was remarkable. His son, Frankie Jr., was holding his hand. "Dad, you awake?" Frank's voice was barely a whisper. "Yeah, I'm here. The doctor says it won't be long now. Is there anything you need? Anything you want to say?" Frank looked at his son, the boy he'd told the truth to in a prison visiting room 43 years earlier, the man who'd become everything Frank never was. "Yeah," Frank whispered. "There's something I need you to know before I go." Frankie Jr. leaned closer. The other children gathered around. This was it, their father's final words. What Frank said next would redefine how they remembered him, how they understood his life, how they carried his legacy forward. To understand those final words, you need to understand the 88 years that came for them. Frank Lucas was born in 1930 in LaGrange, North Carolina, poor, black, in the Jim Crow South. His father was a sharecropper. His mother worked as a maid. Frank watched his father bow to white men, watched him accept humiliation daily, watched him work himself to death for nothing. "I'm never going to be like him," young Frank told himself. "I'm going to be somebody. I'm going to have power. I'm going to make white men respect me." That drive, that desperate need to escape poverty and powerlessness, would define Frank's entire life. At 15, Frank killed a man, a member of the Ku Klux Klan who'd threatened his family. Frank shot him and fled north to New York, to Harlem, to a world where a smart black kid could become powerful. Frank worked for Bumpy Johnson in the 1960s, learned the game, learned patience, learned strategy. Then in 1968, Bumpy died, and Frank saw his opportunity. Vietnam was raging. Heroin was flooding Southeast Asia. Frank made connections with Thai suppliers, smuggled pure heroin into America in the coffins of dead soldiers. It was brilliant, ruthless, and it made Frank Lucas one of the most powerful drug dealers in American history. For 7 years, 1968 to 1975, Frank was untouchable, making $1 million a week, living in a mansion, driving Ferraris, wearing chinchilla coats that cost more than most people's houses. He was somebody. He had power. White men respected him, or at least feared him. But in 1975, it all came crashing down. Arrested, convicted, 70 years in prison. Frank cooperated with authorities, testified against corrupt cops, not his own organization. His sentence was reduced to 15 years. He served 7. When he got out in 1981, he was broke. Felony record, no connections, no prospects, started over from nothing. He worked odd jobs. Security guard, janitor, lived in a small apartment. The man who'd once made millions was collecting Social Security. But something changed in Frank during those years. The desperate need to be somebody, the drive that had fueled his criminal empire, it faded. He started spending time with his grandchildren, started talking to young people about his mistakes, started slowly becoming the man he should have been all along. By his 80s, Frank Lucas was a different person, not redeemed. You can't undo the harm he caused, but changed, softer, wiser, sadder. "I wasted my life," he told a friend in 2015. "I thought I was winning, thought I was somebody, but I was just destroying people and destroying myself." May 30th, 2019. Frank's final day. He'd been sick for weeks. Lung problems, heart problems. The accumulated damage of 88 years of hard living. The doctors had moved him to hospice care 2 days earlier. Morphine for the pain, oxygen to help him breathe. But everyone knew this was the end. His children had been taking shifts, staying with him, making sure he wasn't alone, waiting for the moment. At 6:47 a.m. Frank woke up, clearer than he'd been in days, like the body giving one last burst of clarity before shutting down.